And welcome to the very first episode of the Frontier Experience with Dr. Bill Kibler. I'm Travis Hendricks. Before we jump into our program today, let me provide a synopsis of what we hope to accomplish in this brand new monthly video series. In a nutshell, the Frontier Experience will focus on issues related to Sul Ross from President Kibler's perspective. We're extremely excited about this new series, and we hope to offer you, our viewers, a glimpse into the heartbeat of this great institution known as Sul Ross State University. In our first episode, Dr. Kibler focuses on student recruitment in an innovative effort known as Camp Brandom. Camp Brandom began in August and gives freshmen and new students a taste of college life at Sul Ross. Dr. Kibler, we started a new event this year called Camp Brandom. How did Camp Brandom come about, and what were some of the processes to get this off the ground?
Well, we hope it's a new tradition here at Sul Ross. We're very excited about it, but we just had our first iteration of that this particular, right before the fall semester began. It emerged out of our Frontier Student Experience, a whole series of new initiatives that we're trying to do a better job of really engaging our students earlier, more effectively, really bring connections to students more effectively and more quickly. So the thought was to, and this is a concept that exists at a number of other universities around the country, but we've never done it at Sul Ross. So the thought was we created a pretty intensive, about 2-day experience for our students immediately before the fall semester begins. And we had several outcomes we were looking for in this event, in addition to it just getting our students excited about the beginning of school and the opportunity to just meet a lot of people and really get focused on and motivated about school for the fall semester. So our desire in Camp Brandom, our goals from the beginning, before we even planned how the actual event would work, is we wanted to give students a lot of keys to academic success here at the university, give them some of the information they needed in order to be successful academically. We wanted them to give them keys to success on their experiences outside the classroom, how to connect with the university, how to get involved, how to learn about the university, our student organization, just sort of the whole culture here at Sul Ross.
Given our isolation out here in West Texas, talk about some of the recruiting challenges that we face at Sul Ross and how Camp Brandom will address some of those challenges.
Well, that was related to one of the other goals we had, which was that in the last two ones, in addition to allowing students to learn about the history, the traditions, the culture of Sul Ross. That was an important part of that. But we also wanted an outcome for Camp Brandom is to make sure that no student starts school at the beginning of a new semester without some friends, because we are in a rather isolated place. We're a small institution. So we know that some of our students come from long ways away from here. We also know that some students might be the only student from their small hometown to begin a new academic career here at Sul Ross. Camp Brandom was the opportunity for, it was really over 80% of our incoming new students attended Camp Brandom, even though it was voluntary, so we were very pleased with that. So it gave them, and we organized them down into very small groups, and it gave them the opportunity to go through this experience together with a small number of other students, which built some relationships and allowed, again, no student to start class on that Monday morning without already knowing fairly well a small group of other students that they could reach out to, relate to, talk to, know about, those kinds of things.
You've worked at some pretty major institutions throughout your career. You had a long stop at Texas A&M where tradition is everything there in College Station. One of the highlights of Camp Brandom is introducing new students to traditions at Sul Ross. How important is tradition in the recruiting and the retention process?
Well, I think it's very important. I've experienced it having worked at 3 other universities before I came here, but as you mentioned at Texas A&M, where that's very important. And the idea is that we have very unique traditions and aspects about Sul Ross that are very unique to Sul Ross. But the point is it gives students a sense of place, a sense of significance about this new place where they are, a sense of understanding what's really important about this. And our goal, and we did this at Camp Brandom, is that most of that communication, education of our students was done by other students, not by staff members or faculty members at the university. We had upper class students not only tell them about these traditions or the songs, we taught them the alma mater, but we also taught them a brand new fight song that was actually written by 3 of our upper class students during the summer in preparation for summer orientation and Camp Brandom. And so these students introduced them not only to those things, but a lot of time-tested traditions that have been here for a long time. But you don't just tell them about the traditions, you tell them why that's important, what the history is. Most of the traditions we have here grew out of initiatives that students in the past thought was important. Our desk up on Hancock Hill was an initiative that was entirely done by students that seemed a little funny at first, and it's become a very special tradition. There's this desk up on the top of the mountain, which has amazing views, but it was carried up there by students. But it's a place where you go and sit, enjoy the wonder of the views, but also have thoughts and ponder those. And there's always paper and a pen in this desk where you can leave your thoughts behind. And so that's become a very cherished tradition of our students, and something some students do once or twice or 3 times while they're students here. And I know other students that go up there every single week. And so they will have gone up there scores of times during their experience here at Sul Ross.
You mentioned a word earlier that kind of defines our location in a positive way, and that word is frontier.
Yes.
Given our location, the word frontier really is an appropriate description that ties into the overall mission of our university. What are some ways that we can use the frontier theme in telling our story?
Well, you hit on the first obvious one. We are in an area geographically that, although it's somewhat remote, the majesty of this land affects every single student that ever comes here. Many students that come from other parts of the state had no idea that the state of Texas had these kind of geographic attributes that we have here, the mountains, the desert climate, the kinds of things that really make this place special. But more than that, the concept of frontier has multiple meanings here. The idea that frontier means you're kind of out on the cutting edge, you're pushing the limits in some way, you are doing things that may be very innovative, perhaps doing things that no one in your family, if you're a particular student here, no one in your family has ever done before. We have a lot of first-generation students here at Sul Ross. And so those students may be the first in their entire family to have ever come to college, and they're experiencing all these things for the first time. So it's pushing their limits in certain ways. But we also have some very innovative things that we do here at Sul Ross academically, and our goal is to challenge these students in many different ways, and under this theme of the frontier, that you're kind of really out there experiencing some new things that perhaps you have never been challenged by before, or others as well.
Well, we talked about the nuts and bolts of recruiting and putting together a program like Camp Brandom. But walking down the heart of the campus right now, one thing that I think appeals to a lot of folks is the state-of-the-art facilities that we have here at Sul Ross. Right. But also there's something of the past that I think also appeals to recruits, to students, and to visitors.
You're right. Our campus is one of our greatest assets. We're very blessed because we have had generations of leadership here at Sul Ross that recognized when this campus was begun that there was an iconic architecture here in the original historic buildings of this campus. And we have, for the most part, through 100 years of our history, remained true to that. You can see the beauty of our campus, the red brick, the columns, the precast concrete that just say to people, this is a university campus. Set in the middle of the majesty of the mountains of this land really makes this campus and all that it has to offer to students and parents and visitors when they come here. We get that all the time, how impressed they are with the campus, its beauty, its cleanliness, but also the fact that there's a unity of appearance to our facilities here that really is something pretty special.
Camp Brandom is so important in showcasing what Sul Ross has to offer to new students. As this event continues to grow and evolve, what are some highlights that might be included next year that we didn't necessarily see this year?
Well, we've already learned from the first experience that we had that one of the things that we did during this Camp Brandon, but we didn't do enough of, is we want to provide our new students more opportunities to gather in very small groups with upper class students, where it'd just be about 8 new students gathered in a small group with one of our well-trained upper class students and be able to just ask them any question at all they have about the Sul Ross experience, about what this is like, what that's like, about what life is like in Alpine, here in the Big Bend region. We have a lot of rumors about, because this is a small town and it's kind of remote, there's nothing to do here. We realize that is not true, but they want to hear that from other students here at Sul Ross. So we know that's a part of what we will modify in the schedule and have fewer large group sessions and more very small group sessions, even as small as just 8 students, maybe even sitting in the floor in a circle on the floor with an upper class student engaging in conversations about what life as a Lobo is all about.
Discuss the team effort and planning that goes into producing an event like Camp Brandon.
Well, we knew the key was, and as we began talking about this last winter and spring, was to have an exceptional group of well-trained upper class students, because we didn't want this event to be largely put on by staff or faculty from the university. We wanted students to put this on. Now, we had advising and support and encouragement from staff and from faculty, but we selected initially a smaller group that worked all through new student orientation during the summer. We had about 16 or 18 of them, but then that group grew to over 30 for Camp Brandon, and we called them Lobo Ambassadors. Matter of fact, those ambassadors are the ones that named this camp. They came up with the name Camp Brandon. As I told you, 3 of them, they were all Lobo ambassadors, wrote the new fight song, which our goal was to teach that to every new student, and you're now hearing it at athletic events and other things, and that will just continue to grow. But we knew the key was to identify a highly motivated, very sharp group of upper class students, these Lobo ambassadors, that would lead all this. So we selected them in the spring. They were trained in the spring and more training over the summer to prepare them to be able to do this. And they were the key to the success. Had we not had those upper class students, and they're extraordinary students. They have leadership skills, they're motivated, their infectious energy motivated then these new students to realize, this place is pretty special. And that was an outcome we were looking for. And then beyond that, it was just a lot of logistical planning. You're gonna bring nearly 300 students together in one location. You're gonna keep them there most of 2 days. Well, you gotta have a lot of things going on in order to keep those students motivated, keep their interest up in what we're doing, and assure that those outcomes that I mentioned a minute ago were achieved. And the key to doing that were those Lobo ambassadors. And their role continues, because we're now into the fall semester, but those Lobo ambassadors are holding all during the fall. They'll do 3 of them, one each month in September, October, and November, reunions with their small group of students, just 8 or 10 students. They'll be getting back together with them. These are touch points to allow them to see how these new students are doing, if they're having any issues, problems, questions. This is a contact where we reach out to them and call them together. And we'll do that, as I mentioned, throughout the fall as a way to keep that energy, that focus, the achievement of those outcomes that we had in Camp Brandon, actually assuring that that takes place throughout the fall, with the thought being by then these freshmen have sort of got it. They know where they're supposed to go, who they need to ask for certain kind of questions or issues or problems. And we're hoping that we have launched them off to a very successful career here at Sul Ross.
You highlighted the Lobo ambassadors a little while ago. Talk about, obviously you want students that have an excellent GPA, they're in great academic standing, but what are other factors that you look at when you're selecting Lobo ambassadors as some of the cream of the crop of our student body?
Well, you're right, the first one. They need to be students in good standing, so they have to have good grades. And so we were really looking for enthusiasm and motivation. That doesn't mean all of them had to be rah-rah, almost cheerleader kinds, but they had to be passionate about the outcomes that we were trying to achieve and the whole new way we were trying to approach new student orientation and Camp Brandon. really switching this to far more student-run, student-centered, student-focused. So we needed students that we could rely on to be in front of, be engaged with these new students, and impart the right message and in the right way to these students. So we went through some exercises during the interview process. We interviewed all of them. We had large group sessions and smaller ones where the staff that were kind of working with this had the opportunity to evaluate whether these students looked like they were the right ones. Now, this was all new, and so did we do all of it right? Not necessarily, but we got a great group of students. Now, into this next year, it will be somewhat different because we now have a core group of Lobo ambassadors, including a leadership team from that group, and they will become the keys to selecting any new ambassadors that we have then for the following year. Some of these students that are Lobo ambassadors now will carry forward to next year if they're still in school, if they haven't graduated, so that'll be the core of the new group. But they will primarily be the ones that will be involved in helping us select new students to fill out our numbers, and will play a very key role in the training that we do with new Lobo ambassadors that we select during this fall, and a lot of that training will take place in the spring. That was the goal all along, to really have this be a group that's almost self-sustaining. They have the leadership within that group to do the kinds of things necessary in order to make themselves excellent rather than the staff needing to create that for them.